Last year, something quite incredible happened, a behaviour that I was quite shocked by. This was something that actually kind of threw me quite a bit, and it really challenged what I knew and what I thought about urban foxes. I'm Sean McCormack, I'm a conservationist and vet, and I run Ealing Wildlife Group, and this is our nature reserve here in West London, which is an old derelict allotment site that we've turned into a community asset for people and wildlife. I'm fascinated by foxes. I grew up kind of in the suburbs in Ireland, and my cousins lived in the countryside, and I only saw foxes in the countryside really. But in recent decades, they have moved into towns and cities. We've been looking at a family of foxes for the last 3 years. Now last year, something quite incredible happened in terms of fox behaviour. We had 2 vixens raising their young together in the same den. But in the middle of the summer, it kind of took a bit of a dark turn. When we were watching these foxes, we realised the 2 had cubs together because we saw the little babies coming out of the den. We were watching them with trail cameras and coming up here in the evenings to see them. When I came up and saw 1 cub come out and 2 cubs come out, I thought that's fairly normal. But then when we got to 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 cubs in total coming out, I was just completely astonished and scratching my head a little bit, to be honest. How was there 9 cubs? Could a single fox have 9 cubs? And then placing a trail camera there and watching the family, I realised actually there was 2 vixens. There was a young one, presumably the daughter of last year, having her young with the mum. I can only assume that this was to do with kind of competition for den space, but it's something that's not very well documented in foxes, so it was really exciting to see here. By and large, it was all very, very happy scenes. We had these 9 foxes frolicking and asking mum for food, and had flattened a whole area of vegetation outside the den. And it was really, a happy little family story. But unfortunately, one day that took a slightly darker turn. I came down to put some tools back and unfortunately found one of the cubs dead at the front of the reserve. I realised the cub had puncture marks in its neck, and there was fresh blood there and puncture marks like the animal had been killed by presumably another fox. Kind of got thinking that this must be kind of territoriality or competition. Maybe another male fox came in and killed this cub. Maybe a competing female came in and killed one of their cubs. But in any case, the cub was dead, and the biologist in me was very interested in this. The vet in me was quite interested in the anatomy and the forensics of the scene. But the human in me that is putting aside the kind of scientific mind thought, oh, that's pretty sad. I've been watching these fox cubs for several weeks at this stage and seeing them thrive and grow. So to have at least 1 killed, I was a little bit worried about the other ones. So I thought, waste not, want not, I'm going to actually set up a camera at this fox cub's carcass and see what happens. We know we have red kites in the area, we sometimes have buzzards flying overhead. So I thought, let's see what comes and makes use of this food resource. And I was really, really surprised as to what happened next. So we had the usual culprits come along, crows, we had magpies feeding off the carcass. That evening, the same evening, one of the mother foxes appeared. She gingerly stepped around this little fox cub's carcass and kind of was looking at it from a distance and looking very hesitant about it, and just having a look and trying to decipher what exactly had happened, in my view. It was quite a sad scene, to see these 2 vixens coming in. I'm not sure, which one was actually the mother of this cub, but they'd both raised these cubs together. So quite sad to see them kind of looking at this cub and trying to figure out what happened. None of the cubs came near the carcass as far as we could see, but the vixens were coming in and getting gradually closer to the carcass and starting to sniff it on the 2nd day and starting to take tentative little nibbles or bites at it on the 3rd day. That evening on the 3rd day, we saw a behaviour that I was quite shocked by. They actually started to eat the carcass. As a vet, I can tend to compartmentalise or kind of keep emotional side of things out of the way, because you have to make tough decisions and you have to be impartial for your clients, and yes, you can acknowledge the kind of emotions and sentiment behind our relationships with animals, but you have to try and have a bit of self-preservation as well. With this was a family that I watched, growing up and thriving, and would normally watch with a biologist's hat on and just be interested in their behaviours. But this was something that actually kind of threw me quite a bit, and I found it quite sad. But I guess the rational brain came in to think, why is this happening? How can it be explained? What is the logic? What's the evolutionary advantage here in this mother fox, or both mother foxes, eating their offspring? This was a really fascinating thing to see, because for me, I was trying to think, why would these foxes do this? Are there several reasons behind it? And I could think of two, really, and looking at the research, this is supported as well. One would be that this is a valuable nutritional resource. They're in an urban environment, there's lots of foxes, very dense populations, competition for food is really high, and sometimes there'll be times of plenty, and sometimes food supplies will be in scarce demand. So they could have just been utilising this fox cub because it was there, it was a rich food resource, and why waste it after putting all of that energy into it? So these vixens realise that there's competing foxes around, one of which may have killed this cub, and actually by cleaning the remains and taking them away, they may reduce the risk that their other cubs are going to come to harm. It tends to be the rule that they don't do that because there's a high risk of disease transmission, particularly when it comes to parasites. So certain parasite life cycles rely on a predator eating a prey species, and a parasite like a worm or an internal kind of protozoan parasite completing its life cycle by getting the prey to be eaten by the predator. A predator eating a predator can actually have really harmful effects if they load up on that parasite life cycle or that parasite species. So generally mammals, it's been shown, will avoid eating other carnivores. The biggest kind of difference, I suppose, when you compare them to their countryside cousins, is they're living in much denser populations. You can have, kind of 2 to 10 foxes per square kilometre. Sometimes in some cities, depending on food availability and kind of the richness of the habitat, you can have up to 30 individuals per square kilometre. So that's a really, really high density of foxes. And the things that allow them to do that, really, the prime kind of factor is food availability. We are, as humans, a wasteful species. We throw out a lot of food, we leave scraps on the street, we leave our bins exposed, and foxes have really, really cashed in on that. Out of the 9 cubs, we don't know how many survived. What we do know is that we've had just a single pair here this year and only 2 cubs. So obviously you get some good years where things go all to plan, and other years where the foxes struggle to raise so many. Foxes are quite opportunistic omnivores. They will take advantage of new situations and new sources of food, which is perhaps why they do so well in urban environments and why we're seeing all these strange and new behaviours compared to their country cousins.